Today on Business Journey Unlocked, I'm joined by Jerry Hine, CEO of International Protection Group. For over 4 decades, Jerry has operated at the intersection of elite protection services and organizational leadership, building IPG into a firm trusted by high profile individuals and complex organizations. Jerry, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I'm going to shoot it over to you to explain what you're all about.
Well, I appreciate being invited as a guest, and I'm happy to share. Um, in all honesty, I fell into the business. I didn't have any business background. Started my company on credit cards. Little bit of a story there, but over time you learn about business and you become a businessman. But I'm here and happy to share my trials and tribulations of my course of coming along in this business.
The one area that I always ask people is, what was the reason why you started this? Did you see a flaw, a blind spot in the organization that you wanted to sort of eliminate? Or do you want to just you get the opportunity to go into the field to succeed?
Yeah, I transition. I tell people I'm a former hippie ski bum that did construction work, had a little construction business, just independent contractor basically. Got involved in property management. That led me into overseeing security, and I got into security management. I decided I was going to get a license to be able to offer myself pretty much, just having my own license to do executive protection, event security. And actually, an opportunity came along the way. New York State passed a Guard Act of 1992 requiring anybody doing security to be registered, trained. Anybody providing security had to vet all their employees. And initially, when the license or the Guard Act was being developed, it was thought that everyone, even in house or outsourced or a provider, had to have a license. Well, being I had a license and a number of people knew that, they said, "Hey, we want to give you our business." And in all honesty, I thought, well, how hard could this be? Yeah, to provide security, of course. And then the Guard Act took effect in 1994, and so several people just threw me contracts. And I mentioned, I started on credit cards. I fortunately had good customers that I would give them an invoice on Monday, they'd pay me on Wednesday, and I'd pay my people on Friday. And that's really how I got started. Um, and of course, along the way, I made a lot of mistakes. I actually teach a course on the business of security and executive protection. And most of the course is telling people where I screwed up and not to do that. Because I stumbled and fumbled. It's a miracle that I'm still in business after all these years. Um, and honestly, when I look back over the course of starting a business from scratch in 1989, actually getting my license, until now, I've grossed an amazing amount of money and have made a living for myself. I was fortunate in 2022. I sold a portion of my business to a larger firm who, y- you know, it was a good opportunity after COVID, because at one point I had 1,800 employees, not all full time, but then that scaled back because of COVID. And so after COVID, it was, uh, basically it was hard to find people to work. So I was turning business down, and then I decided, if not now, when? And I decided, you know what, now's a good time to sell. I had a uniform guard division that I was able to sell to a bigger company. Um, and so that was real fortunate because I didn't have a pension otherwise. Um, but I really fell into the business. like I said, I made a lot of mistakes. I learned along the way. There were times where I sat on the edge of my bed on payday, thinking I don't have enough money to pay everybody, and I'm not sure what to do. Um, so I tell people when you're an entrepreneur, you become a business owner, you're responsible for the outcome of what you do. You're not working for someone, and if you've made mistakes, it's on you, and you have to bear the consequences. So it's been quite a journey. I would encourage people if they want to get into business, by all means, go for it. Why not? Um, a lot of people say, "Oh, I always want to start my own company." Then I tell people, do it. Jump out there. There's a business model called Ready, Fire, Aim, and I kind of feel like that's the way I operated. I had an idea and I would initiate it. I didn't wait till all the ducks were lined up in a row because sometimes you'll never get going if you
Oh
wait
yeah.
everything to be perfect. So that's a little bit of my journey.
The one thing that I find most optimistic is that you believed in yourself. You invested in yourself. And sure, there were hard times, but those rough times mold you into the person you are today. Naturally, the best way to learn is by mistakes. You're going to make mistakes along the way, but if you don't change that, that's just a definition of insanity. You keep on doing the same things, but expecting a different result. You're never going to do a different result until you change. And it takes somebody, a strong individual, to acknowledge their mistakes, to portray it to other people so they don't make the same mistakes that you did in the past. Something like that is kind of hard to do in the beginning, but then once you want to spread the knowledge, as you are here today, to allow people to grasp that and truly understand, because anybody can start a business, anybody can, but it takes a certain determination to actually want to succeed. Because people can just lollygag and like, oh yeah, I started a business, but they're not really doing anything. If you're not doing anything to progress the needle, then you're not excelling at all. Now, I'm not saying busy work, because busy work and actually moving the needle are two separate things. Some people have a gray area in that aspect. They think they're busy, but they're not really essentially moving the needle. And what's going to happen? They're going to burn out. They're going to say, what am I doing wrong? This is not working. And then they quit. But the most important time to think about in these situations are those tough times, because those tough times really define who you are and what you would do with the business. And that's the most important thing.
Oh, absolutely. One thing I'm a big advocate, and I teach a lot, and I try to work it in on any presentation. Is the one book that changed my life was called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I got into positive thinking, and almost by accident, I applied it because, in a way, when I was growing up, I was an angry young man. I had a temper. I did crazy, dumbass stuff, got myself in trouble and things like that. My brother gave me that book, and when I began to apply positive thinking, I got positive results. Go figure. And so I always encourage people. That's an excellent book. Not just positive thinking, but I mention it's kind of like GPS for your goal. If you say to somebody, "I want to drive to Seattle," I'm in the East Coast. I can just head west and hit the coast, and then go up the coast or run into Seattle. Well, maybe, maybe not. You want to map out, um, your strategy. And one of Napoleon Hill's sayings is, "Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve." And so you have to see in your mind's eye being successful. You have to see, and you have to recognize there's a course, a path. It's like GPS says, go here, turn here, go 42 miles, and then, get on this highway. In a way, you need to see that within your own business. You have to see some aspect of the forward path. there is something about putting your nose to the grindstone and kind of then looking up every now and then. But part of it is and you're absolutely right when you say you have to believe in yourself. And that's what I encourage people is get into positive thinking. You have to have a positive mental attitude to be successful in business. The other thing that really helped me was my personal faith. I believe in God. I believe in um, the universe is fair. Things happen to you sometimes along the way that are not fair. Sometimes you have clients that are bad and don't treat you fairly. Sometimes my employees would sometimes say, "Hey, that client lied to us," and I said, "What makes you think that they have to tell the truth?" I mean, you would hope they would, but clients and in business, sometimes it's dirty. It's tough.
Mhm.
People will sometimes lie to you. They were not honest, and you have to deal with that business world. But what keeps you sane and keeps you going forward, I think, is that positive mental attitude and really understanding the dynamics that are in play with business. Surrounding yourself with positive people and things like that.
The one theme that I always enjoy expressing to myself, it's not how the world treats you, it's how you treat the world. And there's so many people that have this negative mindset and are in a negative environment, and that correlates to the negative outlook. Because I mean, you can talk about the red car theory, and you keep on seeing all these red cars, you think about these red cars, you see them constantly. So if you have all these negative thoughts, what's gonna happen? Your whole life, you're gonna look at it negatively. You're gonna see no positivity, you're gonna see no happiness, and what's gonna happen? You're not gonna succeed. You're not gonna go anywhere in life. I think I don't wanna say the hardest thing, but obviously when you first start any business, it's easy to say yes, to get all the contracts, to get as much clients, to grow the business, expand the business, get all these employees. So based on that, what are some non-negotiables that you have that were in the past that you realize you had to kind of have a preference for to where you are now in order to pick the right clientele, pick the right employees, so they're all fair, they're all just, they're all honest, and not only will it help you, but it will help the relationship going forward.
No, and you're right that when you first get going, you kind of want to take any business. I remind people in my industry, the security industry, the number one reason companies go out of business is they grow too fast and they run out of money. And it's hard for people to understand. And I ran out of money. I found myself, and I went to my bookkeeper, who was a friend, that I hired to do my books. I say, I got more business. Why am I struggling? He said, more people owe you more money. And so the one thing I really talk to people about is cash flow. You have to manage your cash flow, and so you have to grow proportionally. I had a tendency to just take on anything, and there is a tendency also where people try to drive the market down, and that's a hard thing when you're in business. When you're first in business, you want any business that comes your way, and then sometimes you give a price to somebody and they say, "Oh, that's too much. I can pay you this," and then you accept it. And what you may be doing is shooting yourself in the foot because
Mhm.
the price that you give them or that you agree to is too tight, and you actually may be losing money. So you have to be able to say no. Um, and you also, when clients are hiring you or contracting your services, you have to kind of manage them as well. Um, and just like some, potential sales say no to you, you sometimes have to say no to them, and that's hard when you first get into business. You want all the business, but I actually overextended myself. I got in trouble with Uncle Sam, and Uncle Sam, when you owe him money, he gets pissed off and he charges you penalties and interest. Um, and I thought I was going to go out of business, and I was able to salvage, kind of that dealing with the IRS and owing them money. And in a way, I really didn't know I owed them money, and I found out, why I did. I end up owing them money because I was using money I should have been paying them to finance my growth. Um, and that's the mistakes I share with folks, that you have to watch your bottom line, you have to watch your cash flow, you have to grow proportionately. Um, and there's a tendency for some businesses to, grow too fast, and they actually go out of business. I met so many business owners along the way that crashed and burned, um, because they just grew too fast, and then they had serious cash flow issues. And I can say that I mean, along my course in the 30 some years of operating a business, I overextended myself a number of times, and then also faced having clients go bankrupt, owing you a significant amount of money. And there were a couple times I thought, I think I'm going to go under.
Mm.
I don't know that I can survive. I just thank God that I'm still here, and I was able to operate my business profitably over the number of years that I did it, and I'm still in business. I still run, besides IPG, I have the Executive Protection Institute, training school. So I'm real blessed that after selling my uniform guard business, I still have two companies that I'm running, and enjoying. Uh, Running those companies.
That's beautiful, and it's from the fact that you're passionate about what you do, you enjoy what you do. So, with people in that mindset, they're not working a day in their life. Given the challenges you've had, you were able to grow and understand and not make those same mistakes. But as we mentioned earlier, you're gonna make those mistakes. You're gonna fail along the way. It's from the fact that what you do afterwards defines success or failure within the business. And there's a lot of people that are so used to going the comfortable route. No one likes change. No one wants change sometimes. But the fact is you need to change. You need to invest in yourself. You need to invest in the business, and you need to follow the process. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But you can take those principles that you learned as to why it didn't work and then apply it to another business. I was talking to a gentleman and he's on his fourth business. Each time he knew and learned something from the previous time to get where he is today. And where he is today, he's a very successful person. Runs a security company as well. He's got all these contracts, all these employees. And when he first started, he had $50 to his name for the first business, and his mom helped him with it. But as he learned and grew, then he was able to get all the cash flow, get all the employees, get all the contracts to grow and expand, and he's still expanding. He wants to hit other states as well, but it's from the fact that he never gave up. And that's the biggest thing that people have to realize. You have to start, you have to go. Sure, you won't get the ducks in a row, as you mentioned earlier, but it's from the fact that people are so worried about getting those ducks straight, getting them pointed, that they don't even do it. But you just have to do it. You just have to start and find out what's going to happen in the market. You got to A/B test, right? Obviously, when you went into this, you didn't know anything, but you just went for it. You believed in yourself, and that's all that matters. With the experience that you've had in this field across the 40 decades, and I know you said you were in the business ownership within 30 plus years, so much has changed in security, not only in terms of the way it's interacted now, the principles, the guidelines, but also technology as well. There's so much video surveillance everywhere. There's so much digital terrorism, digital security acts that are implemented in the states now. It's just going to grow and expand. With what you've experienced from when you first started and now, what do you project to see shifts within the niche, the security niche that you're in?
Well, you're right that it hasn't become very digital, but manpower is still needed. Um, so I think, those that are, say, contracting people or, providing people, even though, there's, technology and things like that, I think there will still be needing people.
Oh
One
yeah.
thing, the cost of doing business has increased dramatically. When I made a decision to sell the guard business, I felt it was at a perfect time. Just the cost of doing business was going up and up and up. Insurance, um, you're depending upon, like online systems to do payroll, to do
Mhm.
staffing, things like that, and those costs for me just kept going up. And I had with 1,800 employees or so, I had a staff of 20 to 25 people. My office payroll was like a couple $1,000,000, and that's one thing I remind people is, not everybody working for you is generating profit. There is, you know, overhead or people that are cost, and so you have to make sure you're operating within, um, keeping that in mind. There's a good book called The E-Myth by Gerber. I can't remember his first name, but it talks about like someone who has a profession and they decide to go into business. They have to make a shift from being that say a master carpenter, and a lot of times people will tell that carpenter, why are you working for other people? You should go into business for yourself. And that person decides, you know what, I'm gonna, hang up my own shingle and go into business. Well, now he becomes a businessman, and now he's responsible for invoicing, for payroll, for, ordering supplies and things like that. Where before he just, applied his trade, his craft. Um, for some people, if they're really good at what they do, they can continue to do that, but maybe hire people to help manage the business. Hire a manager or things like that. Part of it is that transition, and sometimes people are very joyful, like you said, and have a passion for what they're doing, but then when they become a businessman, suddenly it's arduous. It's a pain in the ass. You gotta do invoicing, you gotta collect money, you gotta call clients, "Hey, you owe me money, I need," when are you gonna send that check?" And that's not something that they were used to, they just were applying their trade. But like you said, that, it is important to have a passion. I I I like to laughingly joke, say I started my business before Al Gore invented the internet, before cell phones, and before GPS. So, and some people look at me and like, how could you do it? Without those things. Well, we didn't know what we didn't know. You know,
Mhm.
that wasn't available to us. But obviously, the changes in technology, the changes in the world, have made a lot of differences. Really, life has become easier, but you know, when I remember the first time I sat in front of a computer, I didn't even know how to turn it on. And it was one of those computers where the power switch was in the back, and I was like, "Oh yeah, put it at the back of the machine." That's a good place to put it. But and then you have to learn. You have to learn how to use a computer. You have to learn how to, use the internet to design a website or search engine optimization. There's all these new things that you need to know about, not necessarily do. You can outsource some of that. Um, so it's challenging, and the changing now with AI. I'm not a fan of AI yet. I'm beginning to realize I probably need to learn, but I'm old school a little bit, so, but I see a lot of people using AI, and it's a tool, and they're learning how to use it, to help them in business. So I figure I have to start learning that approach myself.
I was interacting with a gentleman who his business is revolved around AI video surveillance. And essentially, the way I view AI, all these LLMs, it's from the fact is in a business sense. business development, that's a perfect way to use it. Absolutely amazing because there's so many different situations, there's so much different automations, workflows that it can help with. But if you're using it for a personal sense, not really anything that you're gaining off of. For example, there's a lot of people that use it every single day. There's a lot of people that depend on it for simple, mundane tasks. That is a horrible way to use it because it's eliminating your brain power, it's eliminating your thinking, essentially. But if you're using it for the business development, for the business to help figure out certain problems or do certain automations to help save you time, essentially you're buying back that time, then that, again, in and of itself is amazing. Obviously, with any business, even though you've been in the business world for 30 plus years, you still want to develop, you still want to hone in on the framework, and it's just you're always thinking, how can I make this more efficient? How can I make this more mainstream? With where you are currently today, and as you mentioned, with technology, with the implementation of AI, how are you personally within your business trying to solve certain friction, and how would that allow you to eliminate such friction doing the automation, doing the AI?
Well, I'm fortunate that once you have a little bit of success, then you have some wherewithal. And so, for example, we hired a marketing person recently who inadvertently we were talking about certain type of marketing, um, and then he reviewed our marketing and said we're underutilizing emails, for example, email marketing, and we were frustrated with it, but he explained how to improve that. So, and that's something, if you don't know how to do something, you have two choices: either learn how to do it or get some help and hire somebody to help you do it. Um, I mean, it, in the early part of my career, I could build websites. There were GoDaddy.com or something like that. I could design a website in 15 minutes. Wasn't the best. When I got to a point where I could outsource that to a web designer, or um, then that took that load off of me. It's funny you mentioned some people are using like AI. My wife loves ChatGPT. I I always kid with her. I said, "What's Chat say about that?" And she gets right on it. And but she uses it as a tool, and it's helpful for her. But I told her also, you gotta verify, because sometimes what comes up isn't always accurate. But um, I probably use different aspects of the AI, or, I do a lot of Google searches. If I don't know something, I Google things, which is kind of a maybe rudimentary AI, I guess. I, use tools that are handy to me. I have some friends that are encouraging me to adapt to certain things, and I'm looking at um, different areas that I may need to grow on. But fortunately, I'm able to hire some people that are helping me so that I'm not in a way bogged down or not going about it slowly. Um, when you hire professionals, there's a cost factor there, but there's also time and money. So, sometimes if you can't do it yourself, can you afford to hire somebody? If you can't afford to hire somebody, then you gotta you gotta dig in and learn about it. And in my younger years, I had to learn, computers. And at one point, I had a Mac and a PC, both on my desk, and I bought a combined unit because I was using Apple. I was using, you know, a PC. And sometimes you have to learn, and you have to adapt. Moving forward. And it's same thing with all these different tools that we have available to us. You have to find out what's out there, and what's affordable. What can you use? I used to have to watch surveillance videos that were time lapse, and you had to watch them for hours, doing an investigation or something just to see somebody walk across the screen, in seconds. And now it's amazing. I have Ring TV or Ring doorbells, and I can tell when different and door locks that I can lock. My wife left the house the other day, and I called her and said, "You didn't lock the door," but I locked it, through my app. So apps are amazing. We have to adapt and be able to use the technology that's available to us. So that's a big part of business. Using things because time is money, and um, once you start using a tool sometimes, and you realize the benefit of it, and you have to just hone your skills. There's a lot of parts of business besides the passionate part. There's some mundane aspects of business, and I tell people, get over it. Some parts of business is boring. Some parts are arduous, not pleasant. Sometimes you're up hours late at night or something doing mundane tasks, but it's got to get done. You either pay somebody to do it, or you got to knuckle down and do it. Do it yourself.
You couldn't have said that any better. And I do agree. It's coming from the fact is if you have the cash flow, then you can outsource it and I'll save you time. That'll allow you to focus on more revenue-based activities. But if you don't, then you got to learn yourself. And no one's going to give you the golden spoon. No one's going to give you handouts. You have to make it work. That's all it is. You have to make it work. You have to adapt. And given where technology, given where artificial intelligence is going in the next 5 or 10 years, the businesses have to adapt. And the ones that don't adapt, depending on certain niches, for example, construction, sure, AI can help in certain aspects, but it won't eliminate the whole career. Security, physical security, won't eliminate the whole career. You still need boots on the ground, as you mentioned earlier. But there are certain parts that if you don't adapt, then it'll one, waste your time. It'll make the process a lot slower. It'll burn money, burn the resources, and then the people that would succeed are the ones that would implement this. That's all it comes down to. After decades of work within your environment, your legacy is more about protection, it's about preparation. If you could instill one piece of wisdom for leaders facing the same uncertainties that you did growing into the business, what would it be?
Yeah, you have to look forward, like you say, that you have to see the changes and you have to think about them coming. Running a guard business, um, and considering the possibility of being replaced. For example, toll collectors. For years, um, I live in New York City, so we go through a lot of tolls, tunnels, bridges, things like that. Now they're all gone. There is no more toll collectors. So, and I was thinking, wow, what happened to all those toll collectors that were maybe some people had a career of it, but some people might have got in, and then all of a sudden we're going to cashless toll. So, in the physical security, I thought with AI or cameras technology, um, I was even looking down the road. I might have to transition to. Um, Being able to have the people watch the cameras, more so, and then there always has to be somebody to respond because, you have say, a guy sitting at a console and, you see something, you see somebody breaking in, who's gonna respond? So there still is a physical aspect of it, but you have to foresee where your business is going, and are you being replaced with AI, or are you being replaced with technology? What are your choices? Either transition, um, and expand. One thing I'm doing with the training school, we're expanding globally. We're now teaching courses in Spanish for Latin America, I met with someone in December about, taking some programs to areas where their countries where the training that we offer is very limited. Um, and so part of it is, expanding beyond the local area. Um, and then you have to deal with competition. And I remind business people competition is not necessarily bad. It drives markets. Seldom anyone will have the whole market. Nobody's going to own everything. Even there's these big guard agencies. They are massive. Um, when it came time to sell my company, I looked to those massive companies because they have money and they want to buy up companies. But I tell people they'll never own the whole market. Um, so competition, you have to really study your competition and who are you competing against. And I tell some people, don't drive pricing down, drive it up. Don't take everything. When you're putting a bid, you want that business, but and if somebody says, well, you're too high, sometimes you have to say, you know what, that's my price. When you're not happy with the provider that you're going to use because they're going low, then you know where I am. And I've had clients um, terminate my contract or not renew it, go with a cheaper vendor. And one client in particular, after 2 years, they came back and they said, Jerry, that was a big mistake. And then I had them for many years after that. So, and part of that is having confidence in the service that you're providing and knowing what your value is worth. Um, and trying to showcase it to be better than average. And so you how to distinguish yourself in the marketplace it was important. I was fortunate that I had many clients. I had some clients 30 years, 24 years, um, 22 years. I had a number of accounts that I had, and it wasn't easy. We had to showcase. And one thing that happened after I sold my company is quite a number of people called me up and said, Jerry, we did not know how good your company was when you weren't there and you weren't taking care of us. It's been horrible, so, and I'm like, well, a little too late, but that was a compliment to get to, for people to admit, wow, your company was better than I thought it was. Um, but, you do your best. You do your best.
Well, it's from the fact that they don't realize until there's a change. There's so many people out there that want premium service, but they want to pay very low. You're paying for what you get. You're paying the standard. You're paying essentially the work ethic that's coming along. And if you always look for the end of the barrel, what's going to happen? You're going to get horrible people that are going to be watching your building, your property, and whatever else you need protection for. Right? People don't understand that.
Yeah, in the guard service, I remind people there's two parts of it. There's the guards and then there's the service. Almost, any company that provides guards, you're basically within a certain pay range hiring out of the same pool of people. Um, but the service side is what makes the difference. And also how you treat your your personnel. We tried to call them officers to elevate them as opposed to say guards. It's like custodian or janitor, but you want to treat them fairly and treat them well because they represent your company. And then the service side is sometimes people will make mistakes. And you'll get a call from a client. We're not happy. We don't want this person here anymore. Um, but we would often negotiate with them, um, and ask, let us manage this, let us deal with this. And then also how you service your clients is the big part. I've heard horror stories of some companies, they get the contract and then they're unresponsive, they're not the client will call, they're not happy with their personnel that are there, they want them changed, and no change, or very lackadaisical, getting back to them and things like that. We actually had a very tough contract that everyone in the industry said, don't take that contract. The person managing it is horrible, and we actually won them over. Then they did end up retiring, but they said that we were the best company they ever dealt with. And the big part of it was we saw that, coming, and we were very responsive. We dealt with things, and then we also call them sometimes in advance. Hey, we just got a notice. The guard is running late. We have a supervisor on the way there. And by giving them a heads up, they appreciated that. And uh, we actually surprised quite a number of people that um, we have one contract that we've renewed. It's a 3-year contract. We've renewed it, I think, 3 times, where other people didn't even last a year. And the big part was the service side of it. And so that's important too, understanding your market, understanding um, what are people happy about with or what are people not happy about with. And then, whenever I had a new contract or replaced a company, I always asked them, what was the problem with the previous provider? And then I told my staff, let's make note of that, of what their complaints were, and then try to stay on top of that. So it's being service orientated. When you're providing a service, you have to service the client. You have to take care of them, and sometimes we've had bad clients that were never happy. When I sold my company, I was shocked uh, reviewing some of the contracts and asking my staff, how did you deal with this client? Because they're horrible. You know, if I had to deal with them, I would have canceled this contract. And my staff was very, they worked really hard, and that's the thing. You have to recognize, when people are working for you, especially in management. Um, sometimes they're doing a tough job, keeping the company going and dealing with problems both from the, say, personnel side or the client side. Um, so you got to make sure you have gratitude towards the people that are working for you. And I'd heard a lot of horror stories when I got in the business of upper management being really disconnected with middle management or the lower management. Um, and I see that sometimes is a problem. You got to make sure you understand. I surprise a lot of my employees. I would often go and work alongside of them, and especially doing event security. Um, a lot of my personnel would often say, "Wow, the boss is here with us. He's working with us in the trenches." Um, and that's important. You have to understand, what they're going through and what they're dealing with. Sometimes labor type work is hard. People standing on your feet, for hours on end. You're dealing with ungrateful people. Um, and it's sometimes a thankless job, and so you have to make sure you compliment your personnel and be grateful for them. Especially on the lower wage side of things, it's tough. I sometimes wondered how do some of the people working for me survive making what they make, but that's reality.
I love the fact that you essentially lead by example. You're in the trenches with them, as you mentioned. And there's a lot of upper management that wouldn't do what you're doing. It shows the true leadership you have. It shows that you actually understand what they're going through, that you care about the employees and the clientele that you're protecting. And naturally, you're going to deal with a couple bad apples. That's anywhere, not just in security, it's just anywhere in business, anywhere in real life. But it's from the fact is they don't define you. You define yourself, and you're there for a reason. You have standards. If they don't accept it, there's the door. There's other people that are gonna come to me that want my services, that are grateful for what I offer. You just that's just the mindset that you have. Again, it's all about how they view everything. They look for the end of the barrel, the lowest buck, and they're never going to be happy. There's no one in the world that's going to satisfy them. And you
You
know
know,
what?
oh, I have a personal philosophy where I felt sometimes God would send me people, and then sometimes I would ask God, "Are they here to help me, or I have to help them?" And then I knew what the answer was. Sometimes I have to help them. So even sometimes low paid employees, my staff would get frustrated with me because I wouldn't want to let them go, even when they would make mistake after mistake. Sometimes, Jerry, we got to let this guy go. He's just not working out. And I'm like, oh, give him another chance. Give him another chance. Um, but I said, if we have to let him go, put your arm around his shoulder, walk him to the door, tell him, hey, it didn't work out, but maybe down the road. And they said, "Down the road, we're never gonna hire this guy again." I said, who knows?" We rehired a lot of people that worked for us because they came back and then sometimes they would apologize. "Hey, I was a knucklehead. I made a lot of mistakes, but I've learned my lesson, and, oh, all right, let's give this guy a chance," So, I don't know, that's just kind of my own personal philosophy. I didn't always work in the trenches. I mean, as I got older, I wasn't always out there, but a lot of big events. We did the New York City Marathon for 17 years, and you have to be on post at you know 3 in the morning, and you start working at 4, and um, yeah, it was tough. A lot of time I'm there at midnight, and some of the big events I would go and work, but over time I wasn't always out there because sometimes I'd show up and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. A big live TV shoot or something like that, I'd show up. So I just sometimes hold a post because, and people would come to me, "Hey, Jerry, this is happening. What do I do?" And I'm like, "Talk to the supervisor because I don't know what to do. I'm holding a post, just, I knew I could do that, but, or I would provide relief for people because, um, sometimes if I come late into the game, it's like, what's going on? I don't know what's happening. I'm not going to make decisions. Um, I had one, um, consultant said, "Jerry, your overhead is too high." And I said, "Well, I'm a little bit lazy. I got other people doing jobs that I should be doing, but in a way I could afford to have that happen." And, it all worked out in the end, I guess. So, um, but like you said, I tried to make sure I enjoyed doing what I was doing. If some aspects of the job became really troublesome, then it's like, "Oh god, I gotta get out of this." I never really had that feeling until after COVID, and, one third of my business, ended in April of 2019 because all events stopped, and I was a big event company, so about one third of my business stopped. Um,
Wow.
and then when after COVID was over and events started happening, people didn't wanna work, or there was still a lot of fear, and also people were getting paid more to not work than to work. That kinda helped, make the decision, maybe now's a good time to sell, and it was, and, it worked out for me in the end.
There's a lot of people that wouldn't give the chances that you give to your previous employees. There's so many people that are so fixated on what they did in the past. Now, you could understand what they did, but there's a difference between understanding and giving them the chance and just turning them away. And I really applaud you for having such mindsets, having such actions, because there's a lot of people that do make mistakes. As we touched on before, mistakes do happen. But if there's people like yourself who give the chances to really prove and show that they turn themselves around, that's all that someone needs. Because there's a lot of people nowadays that aren't given chances. And then they go to God and they say, God, why me? Why me, God? But it's from the fact is they're not with the right people. They
Mm,
haven't found the right people yet. And once they find the right people, once they are shown that there are true and just people in this world, then their mindset changes. Before we wrap up here, you touched on a lot about mindset. You touched on a lot about your core philosophies. For you personally, what is a daily habit that has allowed you to succeed not only in the business world, but also in your own personal development?
Well, I think, that's a good question. Thank you for asking that. And I feel fortunate that my faith, my personal faith, it was a big part of how I ran my business. And when I got into the uniform contract guard business, I hired some people prior that had worked for a lot of companies, and they told me how other companies ran, and I consider them horror stories, and particularly how they viewed people as almost disposable,
Mm,
uh, and so it's just kind of my own philosophy. I try to reflect on things, and I try to look inward. How did I do? And or if a problem happened, did I did I cause that problem or not? Like, and then you have to be honest with yourself when you look inward and or ask yourself, like, I had somebody took some business away from me, which happens in business sometimes. But I asked myself, did I do anything to warrant that? Did I do anything to cause that person harm that kind of betrayed me? Was it something I did? But you have to really be honest, like, did I treat them properly? Did I, is this a result of something I did? And then if you determine that it really wasn't something that you did, then you have to kind of reflect um, on that. I am part of my own faith and my own philosophy is I feel the universe is fair. If something happened to you that was not fair and you didn't do anything to cause that, one is you have to deal with it and you have to accept it. I mean, it's fate, life happens. Um, but you also have to have belief that better things will come. Um, I my vice president who ran my guard services saw over 28 years of him working for me. Um, when something bad happened or a loss of a contract or something like that, and I would tell him, "Hey, better things will come." He saw that happen, and so sometimes other staff members would be a little bit depressed. Oh, we lost that account, or they canceled the contract, and he said, "Hey, wait, wait, think better things are going to come." I've seen it over and over. So my personal faith really helped me in that, and then having a positive mental attitude also. But you have to kind of reflect. Like you said, what do you do daily? I kind of reflect, how did I do today? How did I treat certain people? Was I fair? Did I get on somebody's case? Was that warranted? Maybe I was a little too harsh. Um, I had a bad habit of not complimenting people. I'm being, I tell people I'm a straight shooter. So if they screwed up, I say, "Hey, you screwed up." But you got to lift people up too. And over time, I try to be better at that, um, lifting people up or complimenting people. Hey, good job. You screwed up over here, but everything else was good. And, work on that or something. So that's just something I think trying to uplift other people and not being overly critical. And then you also have to judge yourself. How am I doing? And you have to be honest with yourself. And there's times I'm like, wow, I was a real knucklehead there, and I, you know, I didn't compliment people on what they did, and then I try to call them up sometimes and say, hey, I want to apologize. I probably was a little harsh, and I appreciate you for what you're doing for me. And that's important when you have people working for you. Yeah, they're making money. It's a job, they're employee, but they don't always. Not everybody works for money. They want to have satisfaction. I was fortunate. My bookkeeper is 30 plus years. My office manager 30 years. my previous vice president, 28 years. So I had a lot of people that worked for me for a long time. Um, and I like to think that, that was because I treated them well, I guess. And I don't think they would have stuck around that long if I didn't treat them well. I'm married 47 years, so that's something, my wife's put up with me. So I think that's a good thing in these days.
God bless. God bless. And it really does show that you care about the employees and everybody that you deal with. That's beautiful. For people that are listening and watching this, Jerry, what's the best place for them to reach out to you, to IPG, and also the training institution that you have?
Yeah, thank you. The Executive Protection Institute, the website is personalprotection.com. Um, we do a lot of our forte is 2 7 days training every May and October, but we also do these 2 day programs, and then we have other programs that we offer too. So personalprotection.com. IPG is ipgcompany.com. That's where people can find me, and I'm on LinkedIn. And I tell people, social media is great, but you have to activate it. And also, one thing I encourage people is what I call F2F, face to face. I'm more likely to hire somebody that I've met in person with limited experience over a resume that it is a kick-ass resume, but I've never met this person before. So get out there and meet people, socialize, and if you link in with somebody or, you connect with somebody, have some give and take with them. I've had people that I don't even know, they say, "Hey, Jerry, I hope you don't mind me asking, would you be so kind to look at my resume?" "Sure, send me your resume. I'll look it over. I'll give you some pointers." I wanna help people, and I want people to be successful. I think I mentioned to this, Kevin, I had a philosophy where everyone is a CEO of a company called my enterprise. And based on everyone is their own CEO. And their company is called my enterprise, that they provide services to others. So, and I tell people, you're not an employee, you're a contractor providing my company a service. And you're responsible for the outcome of, you know, you whatever you do, you're responsible for that outcome. So, but I try to encourage people, hey, reach out to people. Don't just link in with somebody and, oh, I'm linked in with Jerry, but I don't have any, you know, contact with him. I tell people, hey, ask a question, ask advice. I have some people that text me all the time. Hey, Jerry, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? Yeah, go for it. I mean, I told you at the beginning, I believe everybody's entitled to my opinion. So I'm happy to share my opinion. Um, but I want to see people be successful. I want to give to others. So my email is jerry at ipgcompany.com. And if somebody has a question or watching your podcast here and they want to reach out to me, shoot me an email. Um, I tell people I might not respond immediately because I travel a lot, but my goal is to try to answer emails within 3 days. I will follow up if anything. I'll say, hey, I'm a little busy right now. I'll get back to you. But I'm happy to help people, especially on the business side of things. I do teach a program at EPI on the business of security and executive protection. So people that are in that particular field, I do have a course. I often teach it online in modules. And like I said at the beginning, I share a lot of the mistakes I made and encourage people learn from the mistakes I made, um, and take to heart some things I'm sharing, like cash flow or knowing your bottom line and things like that. So, Kevin, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate being on your show here, and I wish you all the success too.
Thank you so much, Jerry. I do appreciate your time as well. All right.